It appears as though a massive cyber attack is imminent, and this is something you should be paying attention to because it could have huge implications for the entire world. Right now we have Revel, Anonymous Sudan, and Killnet coming out and saying that they are going to attack the European banking system as soon as June 17th. And that is a big deal because that will affect the entire global economy. Now, they're saying they're going to specifically attack SWIFT, which is an international communication system that's used for banking transactions and things of that nature. And they're trying to let you know that this is not just going to be some DDoS style of attack. They're saying they're not playing games any longer, and this will be an attack on a scale that we've never seen before. And this could be a precursor to things that are much, much bigger, all right? It also seems that this is in response to the European support of Ukraine during this conflict, which would mean that it shows they have bias towards Russia, and they might even originate from Russia. And these are all considerations to keep in mind because a lot of this activity is very concerning to me in the sense of a precursor for any type of imminent kinetic action. We know that here in the modern age with modern warfare, that cyber attacks are likely to be the first indicator of some type of conventional warfare scenario. So keep all these things in mind because if the banking system goes down, things are going to get dicey very, very quickly. Now, at the same time, we've had a huge cyber attack here in the United States as well, which should tell you that this is probably all connected in one way or another. These things don't just time out the way they do just on accident in general. So huge cyber attack here in the United States. It affects several US agencies, universities, and hospitals. And that should definitely concern you because one of the biggest agencies targeted in this attack was the US Department of Energy, which just so happens to manage our nuclear weapons arsenal, okay? Now this was done through the Move It Transfer program, which basically allows people to communicate or message each other in a more secure fashion. And there was a backdoor basically found within the program that could be exploited by these hacker groups, all right? Now, the initial reports are blaming a Russian ransomware group named Clop. And usually they're a ransomware group, but they haven't provided any demands as of yet when it comes to a ransom, which is interesting. Now here's something else very interesting. And before I get into that, I do want to mention that the channel's biggest supporter is Midway USA. And without their help, I want to be able to bring reports like this to the preparedness community, as well as getting other stuff done that I need to do in the sense of physical assets regarding prepping. So keep that in mind. Big thanks to Midway USA. Now, here's what I find very interesting because there's some correlation here that we could probably connect the dots with, but some of this might be speculation. So Clop, who has no demands as of right now, even though they're a ransomware hacker group, well, it's very likely that they were experimenting with some of these, let's just say, security deficiencies within the Move It Transfer program way back since July of 2021, which also happens to perfectly coincide with Cyber Polygon 2021. And after that, there was no other Cyber Polygons because we suddenly found ourselves in an international conflict situation involving Russia and Ukraine. And of course, Cyber Polygon was hosted by Russia. So this was interesting. And don't be fooled, Cyber Polygon 2021 was actually created to address and present a global response to ransomware in Russia. So I find that very interesting that they started working on this whole critical security failure within this program back at the same exact time that Cyber Polygon was going on, where basically companies all around the world signed up to be attacked by BizZone or Buy.Zone or whatever you want to call them, a Russian-based entity in cybersecurity, so that they could teach them how to better defend themselves in the future. Just throwing that out there. You connect whatever dots you decide to connect with that, but that is something I found relatively interesting. Now, the other thing that just happened related to cyber attacks here in the US is that state governments were actually hacked, and the information from Oregon and Louisiana's driver licenses databases was leaked, which means anyone who's got a state ID or a driver's license in Oregon or Louisiana now has all their personal information out there on the dark web, basically. I mean, I can't prove that, but that's what's being reported. And I also found it very interesting that this was being reported by CNN on their front page. And guess what? Who wasn't reporting on it or any of this really? Fox News. So just throwing that out there because look, I try to look at all different media outlets when I'm trying to do this research. And of course I go all over obscure areas and alternative media and the mainstream to see if anything correlates or makes sense. And I do find it interesting that a company like CNN is reporting this front page to let us know about what's going on regarding the cyber attack, when another company like Fox News is just talking about Biden 24/7. It's almost like they've switched spots since the last election cycle. And of course, with their recent outing of Tucker Carlson and some of their new, let's just say, ways of doing business, they are kind of showing their true colors of probably being controlled opposition, especially for a certain age demographic. Because if you don't notice, every single celebrity story they talk about is from celebrities in the 80s and the 90s, people who are basically irrelevant at this point. So I'm just bringing this to your attention because if you're a diehard Fox News fan because of a conservative ideology that you generally follow, which is mostly predominant here in this community, well, I would think twice about fully trusting Fox News for all of your resources. That's just me. Now, why is this a big deal? Why should we be concerned about these cyber attacks? Well, first off, these are massive cyber attacks. They're penetrating extremely sensitive government organizations like our US Department of Energy, which has been hacked multiple times now throughout the last few years. And yeah, you think they would try harder to not allow these things to happen considering they manage our nuclear arsenal, but I mean, what do I know? I'm just some guy who doesn't know anything about that kind of stuff, right? And we also have this banking system attack that's being put out there as something they want to do. They want to bring it all down. So keep this in mind. This is very important information. I hope that you learned something from this conversation. And a big thing to take away from this is that this is a harbinger to war. You have to understand that we know the strategy moving forward with some of these events is that people are likely to use a cyber attack before attacking someone kinetically or conventionally. That way they can take out as much of their infrastructure as possible and then inflict as much physical damage thereafter. And this is why I would pay attention to any of these massive style of cyber attacks that are going on, because if you don't see this as a harbinger for war, then you might be caught off guard and it might be too late. So if you need anything else from me, you know what to do. Go to magicprepper.com. You can also hit me up on Subscribestar if you want to support the channel that way. It's $5 a month and I'll put a link down below for that. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.